Hey guys, tonight we're taking a little stroll through some of the Vatican's darkest, most whispered secrets. Not the kind you read about in old theology books or watch in late-night horror flicks, but real stories, the kind that have left even the most hardened skeptics lying awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if something might be watching them too. You're about to enter the story of a girl whose name is burned into the fabric of modern exorcism history, Anneliese Michel. Maybe you've heard of her. Maybe you haven't. But once you do, you'll never quite forget. It's one of those tales where the line between science and faith, between psychosis and possession, starts to blur and then vanish altogether. This isn't just a creepy story. This case forced the Catholic Church to publicly recognize demonic possession in a way it hadn't in decades. And trust me, if you think your teenage years were rough, try surviving 6 different demons yelling from inside your body. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is right now. I want to know who's listening in the dark with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a breath, and suddenly it's 1975. The air is heavy with incense and something else, something metallic and cold. You're in Klingenberg, Germany, a small gray town with stone churches and tight-lipped neighbors. And inside a modest family home, a battle is taking place. Not between humans, but between the flesh and something else. Anneliese Michel was 23 when she died. But the story began much earlier, at 16, when she started hearing voices. At first it was whispers. Then came the shadows. Dark figures in the corners of her room, whispering in Latin. The same language used in old rites, the kind priests still study but rarely speak aloud. She told her parents she saw the devil's face. They didn't believe her. Not right away. Doctors were called. Diagnoses were given. Epilepsy, depression, psychosis. Pills were prescribed. Her body went rigid during seizures, and her screams sometimes woke the neighbors. But the strangest part? She refused holy water. Not just politely, violently. She began avoiding crosses, her room filled with the scent of sulfur, like matches lit and blown out again. You know that smell. Eventually, her devout Catholic parents turned to the church. And the church didn't dismiss them. In fact, 2 priests were sent to evaluate Anneliese. Not to comfort her, but to determine whether she was actually possessed. This is where it gets chilling. One of the priests, Ernst Alt, later said, "She didn't look epileptic to me." What did she look like then? That's the part no one writes down. Between 1975 and 1976, Anneliese underwent 67 exorcism sessions. You read that right. 67, each lasting for hours. Some of the sessions were recorded. And if you're brave enough, you can find them. Her voice, raspy, guttural, male, claims to be 6 different entities. Among them, Lucifer, Judas, Iscariot, Nero, and Cain. The church has never officially confirmed the identities, but priests present in the room have testified under oath. And here's the weirdest part. She spoke in languages she'd never learned, ancient Aramaic and Latin, dead languages, fluent on her tongue. Now, take a moment. Imagine being in that room. The air thick, candles flickering. You hear your own heart beating. And then, from a frail German girl's throat, comes a voice that isn't hers. It's deeper than any human voice should be. It mocks. It curses. It knows your name. It tells the priest how he'll die, and he believes it. During the final months, Anneliese stopped eating, not because she didn't want to, but because the demons wouldn't let her. Her weight dropped to under 70 pounds. Her knees broke from constant genuflections. She bowed over 600 times in a single day. Her body looked medieval, like something from a forgotten torture chamber. Some nights the priests would arrive to find her tied to the bed not by others, but by her own strength. The walls were clawed. Scratches ran down her arms like ink strokes on parchment. And still, she kept praying. Even between sessions. Even when her voice was not her own, she said the rosary. Some say that was the only time she came back, the real Anneliese. She died on July 1st, 1976. Official cause, malnutrition and dehydration. But that's not the full story, is it? The state pressed charges against her parents and the two priests. The trial was national news. Experts debated whether it was criminal negligence or religious extremism. But here's the twist. The Vatican never condemned the exorcism. In fact, years later, the case was quietly entered into the official archive of authentic possessions. You hear that? That soft little whisper in your ear? It's not real. Probably. Historians still argue over what happened. Some say Anneliese suffered from temporal lobe epilepsy and a severe psychotic break. Others point to the spiritual resistance, her reaction to holy objects, her knowledge of dead languages, as evidence of something unexplainable. Even now, decades later, her grave has become a pilgrimage site. Some come to pray, others come just to feel the atmosphere. A few, too curious for their own good, leave feeling watched. You shift slightly under your blanket. The fan hums on. Somewhere in your room, the shadows deepen, but it's probably just the trick of the light, right? Just imagine. If someone like Anneliese could open a door, without meaning to, how many others might be walking around, holding that same key, not knowing what's jingling in their pockets? Anyway, try not to think about that while you're brushing your teeth tonight. Ready for another one? Because what happened in Germany wasn't the only time the Vatican said, yes, this was real. Now, let's follow you into another dark corner of the world. A place where the sun sets fast and something ancient waits behind the wind-swept curtains. You're flying south, far south, to a house in South Africa where things knock back. You find yourself stepping off the plane in South Africa, the air warm and thick with the scent of earth and wild grass. It's a far cry from the cold, gray winters of Germany where you last lingered in the shadows of Anneliese Michel's story. But make no mistake, the darkness you're chasing isn't limited by geography or climate. It has a way of slipping in wherever the veil between worlds thins. Here, in a small, quiet village nestled among rolling hills, is a house unlike any other. The kind of place where even the dogs refuse to bark after sunset. The family who lives here has called on the church, begging for help after strange things began to happen. Things so bizarre and terrifying that even hardened priests found themselves unsettled. The family was devoutly Catholic, known for their kindness and faith, but they were at their wits' end. Doors slammed on their own, objects flew across rooms without explanation, and strange voices echoed through the empty halls, voices that no one could understand, except the youngest child, who claimed she saw a dark shadow watching her every move. Word traveled fast, and soon the Vatican stepped in, sending a Jesuit priest with experience in exorcism to investigate. This was no routine call. The church doesn't send emissaries lightly. You're not dealing with a typical haunting here. This was a case that had the heavy weight of official recognition. The priest arrived, stepping into a household thick with tension and fear. The air was heavy, not with the usual dust or heat, but with something else, something cold and oppressive. The family greeted him with a mixture of relief and trembling hope. They needed an answer. They needed a savior. And what followed was not the stuff of horror films, but something far more unsettling because it was real. The priest reported hearing footsteps in empty rooms, whispers in tongues he couldn't understand, and sudden drops in temperature that left the family shivering even as the African sun beat down outside. The youngest child would sometimes collapse, her body contorting in ways no ordinary illness could explain. The exorcism sessions began quietly, almost imperceptibly, but soon grew in intensity. The priest described moments when the room seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into forms that looked almost human but weren't quite right. At times, the child's eyes would flash a deep red, and her voice would shift into guttural growls and ancient words. One of the most striking moments came during a late-night session when the priest felt a force pressing against him, trying to push him away, as if the house itself was fighting to keep the darkness inside. It was the kind of resistance that makes even the most fearless shudder. Despite the terror, the priest was unwavering. He moved through the rituals with steady faith, reciting prayers that had been handed down through centuries. Each session chipped away at the malevolent presence, until slowly, the house began to breathe easier. The family, too, changed. The youngest child's collapses stopped. The shadows retreated. The oppressive silence lifted. It was as if the weight had been removed from the very air. The house no longer felt like a cage, but a home again. What makes this story especially fascinating is that it's one of the few cases where the Vatican sent an official representative to the location, not just a priest, but a member of the Jesuit order, known for their strict discipline and intellectual rigor. Their involvement added a layer of undeniable credibility. This wasn't just folklore or superstition, it was a recognized event. The Vatican's archives hold detailed notes on the case describing the phenomena, the prayers, and the changes observed. Yet they remain sealed from public view, fueling speculation and intrigue. Historians and theologians still debate what exactly happened in that South African house. Was it truly a battle between good and evil, or a tragic mental illness misunderstood and amplified by fear and faith? Some point to cultural factors, the blending of local spiritual beliefs and Catholic rituals, as a key to understanding the intensity of the experience. But others hold firmly to the belief that the darkness was real and that the Church's intervention was necessary to restore peace. The family, forever grateful, kept quiet about the details, fearful of reopening wounds or inviting skepticism. You might be wondering why this story doesn't get told as often as Anneliese's. Partly, it's because it happened far from the spotlight, in a place where Western media barely reaches. And partly, it's because the Vatican prefers to keep certain matters under wraps, especially those that challenge our modern understanding of reality. As you sit there listening, you might notice the quiet creak of a floorboard or the faint rustle of a curtain in the breeze. Is it just the house settling, or something more? The thing about these exorcisms recognized by the Vatican is that they always leave you with more questions than answers. They pull you into a world where faith, fear, and the unexplained collide. And just when you think you understand, the shadows shift again. So what happens when a child's innocent eyes see what others cannot? When voices speak languages no one alive remembers? When the walls themselves seem to echo a presence older than time? You realize that the world is bigger and stranger than most of us dare admit. And yet, amidst the fear, there is something profoundly human in these stories, a testament to faith, resilience, and the eternal hope that light will triumph over darkness. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of the story settle around you like a soft blanket. You remind yourself it's just a story. Or is it? Next, you'll travel to a quiet Italian village where a boy's levitation during Mass turned the church upside down and had the Vatican scrambling for answers. But for now, just let this moment sit with you. The hum of your fan, the darkness pressing gently against your eyelids, the comfort of knowing you're safe, at least for tonight. And somewhere in that faraway house, peace has finally returned. Picture yourself in a small village in Italy, somewhere where the cobblestone streets curve between centuries-old stone houses, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafts through the air. It's the kind of place where time seems to slow, and the church bell's gentle toll marks the rhythm of life. But in the summer of 1949, this quiet village became the setting for an event that sent shockwaves not only through the community, but all the way to the Vatican itself. You're in the middle of a Sunday Mass when suddenly the congregation gasps. A young boy, a mere 10 years old, begins to rise slowly from his wooden pew. At first it looks like a trick of the light or perhaps the playful imagination of a child. But then the boy floats upward, gently, steadily, his feet leaving the ground as the stunned parishioners watch in wide-eyed disbelief. Levitation. It's a word that sounds like something straight out of a magic show or a fantasy novel. But for the villagers, it was terrifyingly real. The boy, whose name was Giuseppe, hovered above the floor for several minutes before gently settling back down. The priest froze mid-prayer, his voice caught somewhere between awe and fear. Word spread quickly. People came from miles around hoping to witness the miracle, or curse, depending on their perspective. And of course, the Vatican couldn't ignore such a spectacle. They sent a team of experts, theologians, physicians, and even psychologists to investigate. Now, levitation might sound miraculous, but in the context of an exorcism or possession, it has a darker edge. It's often interpreted as a sign that the spirit, or spirits, controlling the possessed body are trying to assert their power, to show they cannot be contained by mere flesh or gravity. Giuseppe's case was carefully documented. Medical examinations found no signs of fakery or neurological disorders that could explain the phenomenon. The boy's family described his behavior leading up to the event: fits of rage, speaking in voices that weren't his own, and sudden aversions to religious objects. During the exorcism sessions, priests recounted moments when Giuseppe would levitate again, sometimes with such force that they had to hold on to him to prevent injury. One priest described feeling as if invisible hands were lifting the boy from the ground, resisting all efforts to keep him down. You might be thinking, how does one even begin to rationalize something like this? It's exactly the kind of story that makes historians debate endlessly. Some argue these events were psychosomatic manifestations of extreme psychological distress or mass hysteria. Others maintain that the Vatican's recognition lends a weight of truth to the supernatural explanation. Interestingly, Giuseppe's levitations weren't the only strange aspect. He reportedly spoke languages he had never learned, ancient tongues, like Aramaic and Hebrew, reciting prayers and curses alike. The priest documented the presence of multiple voices within him, each with distinct personalities and intentions. As you imagine the scene, think of a small chapel filled with flickering candlelight, the heavy scent of incense hanging in the air, and a boy struggling against forces unseen. His body rises and falls, a physical manifestation of a spiritual battle being fought just out of sight. What makes Giuseppe's story even more fascinating is how it impacted the local community. Some saw it as a divine warning, others believed it was a curse unleashed by unknown forces. The village was divided, and tensions ran high. Families whispered about the boy in hushed tones, and children dared each other to peek through the chapel windows at night. The Vatican's involvement wasn't just symbolic. They approved a series of exorcisms performed by seasoned priests who followed strict protocols. These rites were not merely dramatic rituals, but carefully calibrated spiritual interventions meant to confront and expel the malevolent forces. After months of exorcisms, the levitations ceased, and Giuseppe returned to a more normal life. Yet, even decades later, the story of the levitating boy remains a topic of heated discussion among scholars, clergy, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Some suggest that the levitations were psychosomatic symptoms triggered by intense stress and religious fervor, a mind-body response to trauma. Others insist that no scientific explanation can account for the documented physical phenomena, the multiple voices, or the boy's knowledge of languages he never learned. There's even a fascinating footnote in the Vatican's archives about Giuseppe. After the exorcisms, he reportedly went on to live a quiet life, dedicating himself to faith and charity. Whether the boy truly overcame possession or merely survived a psychological crisis remains a subject of debate. You settle deeper into your chair, the soft hum of your fan blending with the faint sound of night outside. The levitating boy's story lingers, a reminder of how fragile the line between faith and reason can be. And it makes you wonder, what is it about these exorcisms that capture our imagination so deeply? Is it the battle between good and evil? The hope that even in darkness there is light, or simply the mystery that refuses to be explained away? As you blink, your mind drifts to the next story, the one that takes you to the remote mountains of Latin America, where a priest faced something that challenged everything he believed about possession. But for now, let the image of young Giuseppe, floating silently in that chapel, settle in. The shadows are soft around you. Your eyelids feel heavier. You're safe. You're just listening. Imagine yourself now high in the remote mountains of Latin America, where the air is thin and the mist clings to the jagged cliffs like a ghostly veil. This isn't the place you'd expect to hear tales of Vatican-approved exorcisms. But the Church's reach is vast, and darkness doesn't discriminate by geography. In a small village nestled in a valley surrounded by dense jungle, the local community was shaken by a series of disturbing events centering around a humble parish priest named Father Miguel. Known for his kindness and unwavering faith, Father Miguel had served this village for over a decade, yet nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. It started with subtle signs. Parishioners began reporting strange noises. During Mass, low growls barely audible but unmistakably there. Objects shifted places overnight, and the once peaceful church grew cold to the touch, even on the warmest days. Then came the people. Several villagers fell ill, not from any known disease but from a mysterious affliction that left them pale, weak, and whispering in tongues no one recognized. Father Miguel himself began to feel an oppressive weight. His prayers, once easy and heartfelt, now felt forced, like trying to push against an invisible tide. Nights became restless. He dreamed of shadowy figures lurking just beyond the flicker of candlelight. More than once he awoke to find his crucifix twisted in his hands, as if some unseen force had moved it. When the village healer, the local curandera, told Father Miguel that this was the work of a powerful spirit, he sought guidance from the diocese. Soon, a team from the Vatican arrived, including one of the church's most experienced exorcists, Father Thomas, a man reputed to have faced darkness few others dared confront. Father Thomas wasted no time. He began a series of investigations and rituals, carefully documenting every detail. The afflicted villagers were examined, their symptoms studied. What stood out was the shared nature of the experience. Many claimed to hear the same voice whispering threats and promises, and some even spoke of visions that linked their suffering. The exorcisms commenced with solemn prayers, holy water sprinkled, with purpose and Latin incantations echoing through the thick jungle air. But what made this case extraordinary was the resistance they encountered. The darkness seemed to push back with a force that shook the very foundations of the church. During one intense session, Father Thomas recounted how the doors of the church slammed shut of their own accord, trapping everyone inside. The candles flickered wildly, casting grotesque shadows that seemed to writhe and crawl along the walls. The temperature plummeted suddenly, a chilling cold that seeped into bones. Yet through it all, the priests persevered. Their faith was their armor and their weapon. They recited prayers not only with words but with conviction, believing deeply in their mission to restore peace. One of the most haunting moments came when Father Thomas felt a presence so overwhelming that he nearly collapsed. It was as if centuries of darkness had coalesced into a single entity, defying capture or banishment. Yet with every prayer, the grip loosened, until finally, after days of ritual, the atmosphere shifted. The villagers began to heal, the cold dissipated, and the oppressive weight lifted. Father Miguel found his prayers flowing freely once more. The church was once again a place of warmth and light. What sets this case apart is the intersection of indigenous beliefs and Catholic rites. The Vatican's recognition of the exorcism came with an understanding that spiritual warfare isn't confined to any one culture or tradition. It's universal. Scholars have debated the implications of this, questioning how much local spirituality influenced the manifestations and the effectiveness of the exorcism. Some see it as a powerful blend of faith traditions combating darkness together, while others caution against interpreting it as proof of supernatural forces. This story also reveals the human side of exorcism, the exhaustion, fear, and hope that priests and villagers experience. It's not some Hollywood spectacle, but a deeply personal struggle against something they can neither fully understand nor control. You might imagine Father Thomas, weary but resolute, sitting quietly in the empty church after the final ritual, the first rays of dawn filtering through stained glass, reminding him why he endures such battles. It's not glory or recognition, but the faint hope that light, however fragile, can pierce the darkest night. As you let this story settle, think of the endless mountains outside, cloaked in mist, holding secrets older than memory. The villagers, returned to their lives, forever changed but grateful for peace restored. And you? You're still here, enveloped in the soft hum of your room, the coolness brushing your skin like a gentle breath. The story of Father Miguel and Father Thomas is a testament to faith's resilience and the enduring mystery of the unseen. Soon, you'll journey next to a cold northern city, where a nun's diary reveals chilling details about a possession case that confounded experts. But for now, relax. Feel the quiet in your chest. The shadows aren't so sharp here. You're safe. Just listening. Now imagine a cold, gray city somewhere in northern Europe, where the winters stretch long and the sun seems shy, barely rising above the horizon. It's the kind of place where people huddle indoors, wrapped in thick scarves, their breath misting the air like little clouds of quiet. It's here, in a convent nestled on the outskirts of this chilly city, that a story unfolds that still chills the bones of many who have heard it. You're stepping through the heavy wooden doors of the convent, the air inside thick with the scent of old books, beeswax candles, and the faintest hint of damp stone. In a small, dimly lit room, a young nun named Sister Helena sits at her desk, her hands trembling as she writes in her diary. What she records over the next few weeks would become one of the Vatican's most intriguing and unsettling cases of possession. Sister Helena was known for her devout faith and gentle nature, someone who'd devoted her life to prayer and service. But one autumn evening, everything changed. She began experiencing strange sensations. A chilling cold in her room even with the heating on, a whispering voice that seemed to echo around her in the silence, and shadows that flickered just beyond her sight. Her diary entries speak of nights when she awoke to find herself unable to move, her body paralyzed, but her mind fully aware, an experience known as sleep paralysis, but for her, layered with a dark, oppressive presence. At times, she felt as though something unseen was pressing on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Then came the voices. At first, just faint murmurs that she dismissed as her imagination. But soon, they became clearer, speaking languages she did not understand, uttering curses, and sometimes pleading. She confided in the Mother Superior, who arranged for medical examinations that found no physical cause for her symptoms. When these afflictions escalated, doors slamming on their own, objects moving mysteriously, and Sister Helena exhibiting strange behavior, the convent called for help from the diocese. The Vatican responded by sending a specialized exorcist priest, Father Anton, known for his calm demeanor and deep knowledge of demonic lore. The exorcism process was meticulous. Father Anton spent hours listening to Sister Helena, reading from ancient texts and conducting prayers that echoed through the convent's stone halls. The diary entries reveal the harrowing intensity of these sessions. The battle between light and darkness played out in whispered prayers and moments of terrifying silence. One entry describes a moment when Sister Helena's eyes, normally serene, suddenly flashed with an unnatural light, and her voice shifted to a harsh, guttural tone that sent chills through Father Anton. Yet he held firm, continuing his prayers, his faith unwavering. What made this case extraordinary was the evidence, documented in the diary, detailed descriptions of phenomena that defied scientific explanation. The presence of scratches appearing on Sister Helena's skin overnight, sudden bursts of knowledge about obscure religious rites, and an eerie calm that would descend after each session, only to be broken again by renewed torment. The Vatican's recognition of this exorcism as genuine rests not just on the diary, but on the testimonies of those who witnessed Sister Helena's transformation and recovery. After weeks of intense rituals, the oppressive presence reportedly lifted, and the nun returned to her former self, though forever changed by the ordeal. Historians and theologians continue to debate the nature of Sister Helena's possession. Was it a psychological breakdown under extreme stress? A neurological disorder misinterpreted through the lens of faith? Or was it truly a spiritual battle, with forces beyond our understanding at play? The diary, preserved in the Vatican archives, remains a compelling piece of evidence for believers and skeptics alike. It offers a rare, intimate glimpse into the mind of someone caught between two worlds, the physical and the spiritual. As you picture Sister Helena writing by candlelight, her hand steady despite the fear. You might feel a shiver run down your spine. It's a reminder that even the most devout can be touched by darkness, and that faith itself can be both a shield and a beacon. You settle back, feeling the contrast between the cold outside and the warmth of your room. The story drifts softly through your mind like the fading echo of a hymn, and as you prepare for the next tale, set in a remote monastery in Eastern Europe where a centuries-old exorcism has left a legacy still felt today, you begin to feel your eyelids grow heavier. The shadows soften and your breathing slows. You're safe here, cocooned in the quiet night, just listening. Picture yourself in a remote Eastern European monastery, nestled in a landscape where mist weaves between towering pines, and time seems to flow slower, almost forgotten. This monastery, perched on the edge of a craggy cliff overlooking a turbulent river, has been a silent witness to centuries of history, both holy and haunting. It is here that one of the Vatican's most enigmatic exorcism cases took place, a story still whispered among monks and villagers alike. You step into the ancient stone courtyard, where ivy clings to the walls and the air carries a faint scent of incense and damp earth. The monks live simply, their days marked by prayer and silence. Yet, beneath this calm lies a legacy of darkness they've never fully escaped. The story centers on Brother Stefan, a young monk whose spiritual journey was abruptly interrupted by a series of terrifying events. He was known for his deep devotion and gentle spirit, someone who could often be found kneeling long after others had left the chapel. But in the harsh winter of 1783, everything changed. It began with dreams, vivid, disturbing dreams of shadowy figures reaching out to him, whispering threats he could barely understand. Soon after, these nightmares spilled into his waking hours. The other monks noticed that Brother Stefan would suddenly freeze in place, his eyes wide and unfocused, as if seeing something invisible to everyone else. One evening, during Vespers, a blood-curdling scream shattered the usual quiet, sending a ripple of panic through the monastery. Brother Stefan collapsed, convulsing violently. The monks rushed to his side, but whatever held him seemed relentless. They called for the abbot's intervention, who in turn contacted the local bishop. Word quickly spread, and soon an exorcist from Rome was summoned, a priest named Father Lucien, renowned for his courage and wisdom in spiritual battles. Father Lucien arrived with his rituals and sacred objects, but this was no ordinary exorcism. The darkness gripping Brother Stefan was ancient, stubborn, and cunning. According to the monks' accounts, the entity seemed to know the prayers before they were spoken, mocking them silently in the pauses. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows that danced like specters on the stone walls. What made this case particularly notable was the involvement of an old manuscript discovered during the exorcism preparations. Hidden in the monastery's archives, it contained prayers and rites long forgotten, believed to have been written by monks who faced similar torment centuries earlier. Father Lucien incorporated these ancient words into his prayers, blending tradition with necessity. The exorcism stretched over several days and nights. The monks took turns guarding Brother Stefan, witnessing phenomena that seemed to blur the line between reality and nightmare. Furniture moved without touch, strange. Symbols appeared carved into wooden beams, and chilling laughter echoed through the halls. Yet, despite the terror, the monks held fast to their faith, their chants rising in defiance. At one pivotal moment, Father Lucien described how Brother Stefan's body arched backward unnaturally, eyes glowing with an unholy light. The priest pressed on with prayers, his voice steady, even as the air grew colder and the shadows lengthened. Slowly the torment seemed to ebb, like a storm retreating after a long night. By dawn on the final day, a serene silence settled over the monastery. Brother Stefan, exhausted but free, opened his eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks. The monks rejoiced, feeling the weight of darkness lift from their home. This exorcism is still remembered not just for its drama, but for its documented connection to the monastery's history. The manuscript Father Lucien found has since been preserved. studied by scholars fascinated by the blend of local folklore and Catholic ritual. Some historians argue that the events reflect a clash between pagan beliefs still lingering in the region and the Church's spiritual authority. Others suggest the intensity of the experience speaks to the human mind's struggle with trauma and faith, a narrative shaped by centuries of cultural memory. Whatever the truth, the story remains a powerful testament to resilience and hope in the face of darkness. As you picture the monastery's cold stone walls slowly warming with the morning light, you can almost hear the faint echoes of monks' prayers carried on the wind. The past and present seem to merge, reminding you that some stories are never truly left behind. They linger in places, in memories, waiting to be heard. You're still here, wrapped in your blanket, the quiet of the night surrounding you like a gentle embrace. The tale of Brother Stefan and Father Lucien is a reminder that even in the deepest shadow, faith can be a light strong enough to guide the way. Soon you'll hear about an American case from the 20th century where modern science met ancient ritual in a clash that questioned everything we think we know about possession. But for now, breathe deeply. Feel your body soften and let the quiet calm settle over you like a lullaby. Imagine yourself in the bustling heart of 20th century New York City, a place that never truly sleeps, where the hum of taxis, the chatter of crowds, and the flicker of neon lights create a constant backdrop of energy. But amid the city's relentless pace, a different kind of story was unfolding, one that seemed to bridge the gap between ancient beliefs and modern science. It all began in the mid-1940s, when a young woman named Anna was admitted to a psychiatric hospital after exhibiting behaviors that puzzled doctors and terrified her family. Anna's case quickly became one of the most documented exorcisms in American history, drawing the attention of both medical professionals and the Vatican. You can almost picture Anna's room, a small, sterile space lined with metal beds, the smell of antiseptic thick in the air. But in that cold, clinical environment, something unexplainable was happening. Anna claimed to hear voices that weren't there, to speak in languages unknown to her, and to display extraordinary strength that defied her frail appearance. Doctors initially diagnosed her with schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder, but the more they observed, the less comfortable they felt with the purely medical explanation. It was as if Anna was caught in a battle that transcended the physical, caught between realms. Her family, desperate for help beyond what science could offer, reached out to the Church. The Vatican, cautious but intrigued, authorized an investigation, and eventually appointed Father Raymond as the official exorcist for the case. Father Raymond was a man trained in both theology and psychology, embodying a rare balance of faith and reason. The exorcism sessions began under strict medical supervision, blurring the lines between hospital and sanctuary. Father Raymond's prayers mixed with the clinical observations of psychiatrists, creating an atmosphere both tense and surreal. At times, Anna's behavior would swing wildly, from moments of deep despair to sudden bursts of rage and incomprehensible speech. One of the most chilling episodes occurred during a session when Anna's voice shifted, speaking in Latin with a clarity and authority that stunned everyone present. She recited ancient curses and invoked names that even Father Raymond admitted were unfamiliar. Yet, when the priest responded with prayers, a calm would briefly descend before the storm returned. The medical staff documented unusual phenomena: unexplained bruises appearing on Anna's body, sudden changes in her vocal cords' pitch, and her apparent resistance to sedation. These signs baffled doctors and fueled debate. Was this an elaborate psychological manifestation, or something genuinely supernatural? Meanwhile, Father Raymond's faith was tested repeatedly. He described moments when the room felt suffocatingly cold, when the lights flickered as if controlled by an unseen hand, and when Anna's eyes glowed with an eerie light. But his resolve never wavered, and his prayers persisted through the long nights. The Vatican eventually deemed the case an authentic possession, officially recognizing the exorcism after careful review of all evidence. Anna's recovery was slow, but steady, and she later spoke of feeling freed from a darkness that had held her captive for months. This case became a touchstone in discussions about the intersection of mental health and spiritual affliction. It raised profound questions about how we understand the mind, the soul, and the unexplained. The medical community remains divided. Some see Anna's experience as a complex psychological condition, while others acknowledge the undeniable elements that science cannot yet explain. What sets this exorcism apart is the collaboration between faith and science, a rare instance where two worlds that often clash found a fragile truce. Father Raymond's approach blended compassion with ritual, recognizing that sometimes the answers lie beyond textbooks. As you listen to this story, you might find yourself pondering the mysteries of belief and reason, of how faith can shine through even in the most clinical of settings. It's like realizing that behind the sterile walls of a hospital, ancient battles for the soul continue, unseen but no less real. And speaking of battles, coming up next is a tale from rural Italy, where a family's desperate plea led to one of the Vatican's most intense exorcisms, involving not just priests, but the community itself. For now, let your breath slow, the sounds of the city fade into the background of your mind, and feel the quiet power of faith weaving through the night, wrapping you in its gentle embrace. Now picture a small village tucked deep within the rolling hills of rural Italy. Narrow cobblestone streets wind between rustic stone houses, their weathered facades telling stories of centuries past. The scent of fresh bread mingles with the crisp air, and church bells ring softly in the distance, marking the passage of time with a calm regularity that feels worlds away from the chaos of city life. But beneath this tranquil exterior, the village carried a heavy secret, one that drew the attention of the Vatican and would soon ripple beyond its borders. You see, this was the setting of one of the most intense and communal exorcisms ever officially recognized by the Church. Unlike the solitary struggles of individuals in grand monasteries or sterile hospitals, this was a case that engulfed an entire family, and by extension the whole village. It began with the Rossi family, who lived on the outskirts in a modest farmhouse surrounded by olive groves. The youngest daughter, Lucia, was only 12 when strange things started happening. It was subtle at first, objects moving without explanation, whispers echoing in empty rooms, and a chilling coldness that no fire could chase away. As days passed, Lucia's behavior changed drastically. Her once cheerful demeanor was replaced by fits of rage, sudden bouts of silence, and disturbing visions that left her trembling. Neighbors whispered about curses and dark forces, old superstitions resurfacing like shadows from the past. Desperate, the Rossi parents sought help first from doctors and local healers, but when no remedy was found, their last hope was the Church. The parish priest, Father Angelo, was a man known for his humility and unwavering faith. He visited the family frequently, praying and offering comfort, but the darkness seemed to resist all efforts. Word spread, and soon the village found itself united in concern. The Church became the heart of the community's prayers, a beacon against the growing fear. The bishop, recognizing the gravity of the situation, sent an experienced exorcist, Father Matteo, to take charge. What makes this case remarkable is not only the severity of Lucia's condition, but the way it involved the entire village in a shared spiritual battle. The exorcisms were not confined to private rooms, but often took place in the church, with villagers gathering to lend their voices in prayer and support. Father Matteo's method was rigorous and patient, combining traditional rites with the pastoral care of the family and community. He often reminded everyone that evil feeds on isolation and despair, but faith grows strongest in unity. During the exorcisms, witnesses described eerie occurrences, flickering lights, sudden gusts of wind inside closed spaces, and moments when Lucia spoke in tongues none could understand. The priests faced moments of profound challenge. Lucia's resistance was fierce, and it seemed as if the malevolent force tried to break not just her spirit, but the hope of all present. Yet, amid these trials, the village's faith held firm. The communal prayers, the shared vigils, and the presence of loved ones created a shield around Lucia, a palpable force of love and determination. After weeks of persistent effort, the darkness began to lift. Lucia's eyes cleared, her voice softened, and the chilling coldness gave way to the warm light of spring. The village celebrated quietly but with profound relief, a testament to their endurance and belief. Historians still debate the extent to which the communal aspect influenced the outcome. Some argue that the power of collective faith and support played as crucial a role as the rituals themselves. Others see it as a vivid example of how spiritual crises can ripple through communities, touching lives far beyond the individual. What remains undeniable is the unique nature of this exorcism, a story not just about one girl, but about an entire village standing together against darkness. It's a reminder that sometimes the most potent exorcisms are not performed in solitude, but in the warmth of community and shared hope. So, as you settle deeper into your bed, imagining the quiet village with its flickering candlelight and steadfast prayers, consider the ways we all seek light in our darkest moments. Sometimes, it's the simple act of coming together that turns the tide. And coming up next, a case from South America where the lines between indigenous traditions and Catholic exorcism rituals blurred into a fascinating and mysterious story that still captivates experts today. For now, breathe gently. Feel the comfort of togetherness wrap around you, and let your thoughts drift softly with the night. Now imagine the dense, lush jungles of South America, where the air is thick with humidity and the hum of insects creates a constant soundtrack to daily life. In this remote landscape, ancient traditions intertwine with the influence of Catholicism, introduced centuries ago, resulting in a complex spiritual tapestry that continues to mystify even the most seasoned observers. It is here that one of the Vatican's most enigmatic exorcisms took place, a case that blends indigenous rituals with the formal rites of the Church in a way that few outside the region have truly understood. The story centers around a young man named Miguel, born into a small community that had long preserved its ancestral beliefs while embracing Christianity. Miguel was known to be a kind and gentle soul, deeply connected to the land and the customs of his people. But in his late teens, his life took a terrifying turn. Miguel began exhibiting strange symptoms. Voices that no one else could hear, violent tremors, and sudden, uncontrollable fits that left his family and community frightened and confused. The local shamans attempted to intervene, performing traditional ceremonies that had been passed down through generations. But Miguel's condition worsened, defying their efforts. The community turned to the Church for help, and the Vatican sent Father Enrique, a priest with experience in both exorcism and an understanding of indigenous spiritual practices. What followed was not a simple confrontation between good and evil, but a delicate dance of respect, faith, and cultural complexity. Father Enrique recognized that Miguel's affliction was not just a possession in the traditional Catholic sense, but also involved spiritual elements unique to the indigenous worldview. He worked closely with local shamans, blending prayers with rituals meant to honor the spirits of the land, creating a hybrid exorcism that was as much about reconciliation as it was about expulsion. Witnesses recall moments during the rites when Miguel's body convulsed violently, his voice alternating between Spanish, Latin, and native tongues unknown to the priests. The shamans sang ancient chants, the scent of sacred herbs filled the air, and a palpable tension gripped everyone present. One of the most striking episodes occurred when Miguel seemed to speak through multiple voices, each one representing a different spirit or entity. It was as if the boundaries between worlds had dissolved, and the community stood at the edge of an unseen abyss. Throughout the exorcisms, Father Enrique emphasized compassion and understanding, often reminding everyone that the goal was not merely to cast out darkness but to restore balance. This approach marked a significant departure from more rigid exorcism practices and highlighted the Church's evolving recognition of diverse spiritual experiences. After several weeks, Miguel's symptoms began to abate. The voices faded, the convulsions ceased, and a calm settled over him. The combined efforts of faith, tradition, and community had brought about a healing that neither science nor ritual alone could achieve. Experts continue to debate the true nature of Miguel's possession. Some view it as a psychological condition complicated by cultural expression, while others accept the reality of spiritual conflict influenced by multiple belief systems. The case remains a powerful example of how exorcisms can transcend boundaries, embracing complexity rather than confrontation. As you let this story settle in your mind, think of the delicate balance between ancient and modern, the seen and unseen, and the many ways humans seek to understand and heal the mysteries that touch their lives. Coming up next, we'll explore a chilling exorcism from Eastern Europe, where political turmoil and religious fervor created an atmosphere ripe for supernatural encounters that still haunt the region's memory. For now, feel the soothing embrace of the night, the gentle whisper of the jungle winds, and allow your thoughts to wander softly toward rest. Now let your mind travel to the shadowed landscapes of Eastern Europe, where ancient forests stretch endlessly, and history's weight is felt in every stone and whispered legend. This region, rich in folklore and scarred by centuries of conflict, became the stage for an exorcism that not only challenged faith, but echoed the tensions of a turbulent era. It was the early 1950s, a time when the Iron Curtain tightened its grip, and political paranoia mixed with deep-rooted religious beliefs, to create an atmosphere thick with fear and suspicion. In a small village nestled between towering pines, a young woman named Katerina found herself at the center of a story that would resonate far beyond her humble home. Katerina had always been a quiet girl, devoted to her family and church. But after a sudden illness, strange and terrifying symptoms took hold. She spoke in tongues unknown to those around her, exhibited unnatural strength, and at times her eyes glowed with an unearthly light. The village elders whispered of possession, a curse perhaps brought on by unseen enemies. Local doctors were baffled, unable to diagnose or treat her condition effectively. The church, still wary of drawing attention during the oppressive regime, hesitated, but eventually, a priest named Father Stefan was sent from the city to investigate. What followed was an exorcism shrouded in secrecy and fear, conducted in a dimly lit church, with the villagers holding their breath just beyond the heavy wooden doors. The ritual became a battleground for forces both spiritual and political. Father Stefan was a man of deep conviction, but burdened by the oppressive surveillance that shadowed his every move. His prayers echoed against cold stone walls, his voice steady despite the palpable tension. Katerina's resistance was fierce. Her voice changed, twisting between familiar speech and guttural sounds that sent chills down the spine. Witnesses recount how the air grew cold, candles flickered wildly, and the very walls seemed to tremble as the ritual unfolded. At one point, Katerina uttered a phrase in Latin that no one expected, a plea for mercy that revealed a hint of the torment within. The exorcism lasted several days, each session exhausting both the priest and the girl. Father Stefan's faith never faltered, even as he faced threats from political agents who feared that such acts might undermine the state's control. This case remains one of the few officially recognized exorcisms from that era in Eastern Europe, a rare glimpse into how faith persisted under oppression. The political context added layers of danger and complexity, making the spiritual battle all the more poignant. After the final prayers, Katerina's transformation was profound. The unnatural behaviors ceased, and a serene calm settled over her. The village breathed a collective sigh of relief, and Father Stefan quietly returned to his duties, carrying the weight of the secret with him. Historians continue to debate the impact of the political climate on the case. Was Katerina's possession a manifestation of psychological stress under repression? Or was it truly a spiritual warfare intensified by the era's darkness? The truth remains elusive, wrapped in layers of faith, fear, and history. As you listen to this final chapter, let the story of Katerina remind you of the resilience of the human spirit, how even in the darkest times, hope and faith can flicker like a candle in the night, steadfast and enduring. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy and the world quiets around you, imagine the gentle hush of that Eastern European night, the soft murmur of prayers carried on the breeze, and allow yourself to drift peacefully into sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.